When a war ends, the world often breathes a sigh of relief. Headlines soften, crowds disperse, flags are folded, speeches are made, and leaders shake hands under bright lights. To most people, peace looks like an ending, a final chapter, a full stop after years of chaos. But for the people who actually lived through the fire, peace is never an ending. For them, peace is the beginning of something far more complicated, far more silent, and far more painful. This story begins not in the noise of battle, but in the quiet moments that come after it. The last convoy rolled out of the valley at dawn, its tires crushing soft dust that once carried the pounding rhythm of war. In the pale morning light, the land looked peaceful, almost innocent, as if it had forgotten the echoes of gunfire that once defined it. But scars don't vanish when the smoke clears, not on land, not on people, not on hearts. Among the soldiers leaving that valley was Sergeant Adam Hale, a man whose eyes held more stories than his voice could ever speak. Adam had survived the battlefield, but survival, he would soon learn, was only the first step. The hardest part was learning how to live again. The moment he stepped into the transport truck, he looked back one last time. His eyes rested on the hills, the same hills where he lost brothers, where he lost pieces of himself he knew he could never reclaim. That final glance felt like closing a door that would never truly remain shut. As the engine roared, Adam whispered into the wind, "Let me be whole again, even if I no longer know how." Conflict has a way of following people home, not as noise, but as memory. Not as explosions, but as silence. Not as bullets, but as shadows that cling to their every step. When Adam's flight landed, a wave of relief washed over the airport. Families erupted in tears, voices cracked with joy. Children ran with open arms toward uniforms they had been praying to see again. But Adam stood slightly apart, watching a world that seemed too bright, too loud, too alive. His family hugged him tightly, but even in their embrace, he felt a strange distance. The world had continued spinning without him. People had dreams, routines, laughter, life. And he had learned to survive in a place where none of those things existed. He wasn't sure how to bridge the two worlds anymore. During the first night home, Adam sat alone at the edge of his bed. His hands trembled as he traced the faint scars along his arm. The clock ticked softly in the background, a sound so ordinary, so harmless, yet each tick sounded like the countdown of a mortar round. He closed his eyes. The dark felt safer. The quiet felt even safer than that. But the memories didn't respect silence. Faces flashed in his mind, faces of soldiers who never made it home. Brothers who joked with him, fought beside him, shared their last moments with him. Their voices were softer now, like fading echoes. But they were still there. He whispered their names, all of them, one by one, because forgetting them felt like losing them twice. In the days that followed, Adam tried to step back into normal life. He tried walking through supermarkets, but the bright lights and crowded aisles made his heart race. He tried sitting with friends, but every loud laugh felt jarring. He tried sleeping, but peace had become a stranger he no longer recognized. One morning, his mother found him sitting in the living room before sunrise, staring at nothing. His hands were clasped tightly, his jaw trembling just slightly. She approached gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Adam, you're home now. You're safe." He looked up at her with eyes full of shadows. "I know," he whispered, "but my mind, it hasn't come home yet." Those words broke her. Because how do you heal wounds you can't see? How do you help someone whose pain has no shape, no scar, no bandage? The world rarely talks about the silent battles that come after war. The fear that lingers long after danger is gone. The guilt of surviving when others didn't. The weight of memories that refuse to fade. For Adam, every day became a negotiation between the man he was and the man he was trying to become. He joined a veteran support group, a circle of chairs, a dimly lit room, and strangers who somehow felt familiar. They were different in age, rank, and background, but their eyes all carried the same heaviness. In that room, people didn't talk in military jargon. They didn't brag about bravery. They didn't pretend to be strong. There, they spoke about fear, loss, guilt, loneliness. The nights where sleep was impossible and the days where hope felt unreachable. A man named Marcus, a former medic, once said softly, "War ends on the map, but it doesn't end in the mind." Everyone in the room nodded, including Adam. For the first time since returning home, he didn't feel alone. Weeks passed. Slowly, painfully slowly, Adam began to find moments of light. A morning where the sun felt warm instead of blinding. A conversation with his sister that made him genuinely smile. A walk through the park where the sound of children playing didn't make his heart race. A night where he actually slept. These small victories, invisible to the world, were enormous to him. But healing isn't a straight line. Some days he stepped forward. Other days he slipped back into the darkness. One night, after a particularly difficult nightmare, Adam sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket. The cold air bit at his skin, grounding him. A neighbor, a quiet old man named Mr. Lawson, walked over slowly. He had served in a war decades earlier. He didn't speak at first. He simply sat beside Adam, hands folded, eyes soft with understanding. After a moment, he said quietly, "It's not weakness to struggle, son. It's human." Adam swallowed hard. "I feel broken," he whispered. The old man shook his head. "No, you're hurt. And hurt things heal, slowly, but surely." Adam closed his eyes. Those words settled deep inside him, not as comfort, but as truth, a truth he needed. Recovery isn't a dramatic transformation. It's not a sudden return to the person one used to be. Recovery is made of moments, small, fragile, vital moments that stack on top of each other until one day, without realizing it, life begins to feel possible again. Adam started volunteering at a community center, helping families affected by conflict. He listened to their stories. He shared pieces of his own. He began to understand something powerful. Healing doesn't only come from being helped. It also comes from helping others. This marked the beginning of something new. the first spark of purpose in a place where hope once felt unreachable, the beginning of rebuilding a life. There's a moment, a quiet, almost invisible shift when surviving turns into rebuilding. For Adam, that moment didn't come in a flash of inspiration. It didn't arrive with fireworks or applause. It came on an ordinary morning when he stood outside the community center watching a young boy try and fail to repair a broken toy truck. The child's small hands trembled in frustration. The wheels wouldn't stay on. The frame was cracked. The boy sighed, defeated, ready to toss it away. Something stirred in Adam, a memory, a lesson, a truth he had learned in the chaos of war. Nothing broken is beyond repair, not if someone cares enough to try. He knelt beside the child, picked up the truck, and gently said, "Let's fix it together." And somehow, that simple moment, a broken toy in one hand, a child's hope in the other, became the beginning of Adam's own healing. The community center buzzed with quiet energy every day. It wasn't a grand place. The paint was peeling, the chairs squeaked, the walls carried years of memories. But inside those walls were stories of survival, loss, hope, and the fragile courage of people trying to rebuild after conflict. These weren't soldiers from Adam's unit. These were civilians, families who carried battles no uniform could represent. There was Lena, a mother who lost her home and husband in the same month, raising 3 children on her own. There was Mr. Ortega, whose leg injury kept him from returning to work, forcing him to reinvent his future from scratch. And Darius, a teenager who hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years, ever since he witnessed things no child should ever see. Adam listened to them, really listened. In their voices, he heard echoes of himself. In their silence, he recognized wounds he knew all too well. And slowly, a sense of purpose began taking root in him, soft at first, then stronger, like a seed pushing through hard soil. He wasn't just healing. He was helping others heal. And that gave him something the battlefield had taken from him, a reason to exist. One day, as Adam was helping organize supplies, Lena approached him with a pot of warm soup in her hands. "You work too much," she said gently. "Sit, eat." He smiled, a little embarrassed. "I'm fine." "No," she replied firmly. "You survived a war. You shouldn't have to survive your own kindness." Her words caught him off guard. It wasn't often that someone cared for him. People admired soldiers, respected them, thanked them, yes. But caring, seeing past the uniform, past the strength, past the silent suffering, that was rare. He sat down. She poured the soup. The warmth seeped through him in a way he didn't expect. For a moment, the world felt calm, and Lena said something that stayed with him. "You know, rebuilding isn't just about houses and roads. Sometimes it's about rebuilding people, one heart at a time." Adam didn't respond. He didn't need to. Her words spoke directly to the part of him he had been afraid to acknowledge, the part that still believed in humanity. As weeks turned into months, Adam became a steady figure in the community. He helped rebuild damaged homes, hammer in one hand, hope in the other. He organized donation drives for families, starting from scratch. He spent afternoons teaching children simple skills, tying knots, reading maps, building things from scraps, small things, but meaningful things. And in return, the community gave him something he didn't know he needed: belonging. Not the belonging of a military unit where orders shaped every moment, but the belonging of genuine human connection where people looked at you and saw not the scars, but the strength beneath them. Yet, healing is never a straight path. Some nights, Adam still woke up, gasping for air, his heart racing, his mind trapped in memories he wasn't ready to face. Some mornings, he stood in the shower for too long, letting the water wash away the invisible weight pressing against his ribs. There were days when everything in him felt heavy, days when his smile was a mask, days when he questioned whether any of this helping, rebuilding, trying truly mattered. But every time he faltered, something pulled him forward: a child's laugh, a family's gratitude, a hand on his shoulder from someone who once felt lost but now stood a little taller. Hope, he learned, does not return in a single moment. It returns in fragments, piece by piece, light by light, heart by heart. One afternoon, the community center received news of an upcoming rebuilding initiative, a large-scale effort to restore homes, schools, and workplaces destroyed in the conflict. The program needed volunteers, many volunteers. Without hesitation, Adam raised his hand. So did Lena. So did Mr. Ortega. Even Darius, the silent teenager, stepped forward, surprising everyone. This was more than a project. It was a chance for people to reclaim not just buildings, but dignity. The first day of the initiative felt like the first day of a new world. Broken walls, cracked windows, silence filled with the ghosts of what used to be. But for the first time, Adam didn't see destruction. He saw possibility. Children painted broken fences with bright colors. Women replanted gardens that once lay buried in debris. Old men fixed rooftops with hands that trembled but did not stop. There was pain everywhere, but there was also purpose. There was grief, but there was also gratitude. There was loss, but there was also life. During one long day of work, Adam found Darius sitting alone, staring at an unfinished wall. "You doing okay?" Adam asked gently. The boy didn't respond, not at first. Then, after a long silence, he whispered something soft and fragile. "I don't know how to be normal anymore." Adam sat beside him. "No one does," he said. "Not after you've been through something like this. Normal isn't something you find, it's something you rebuild." Darius looked up, eyes shimmering with tears he refused to let fall. "How long does it take?" he asked. Adam inhaled deeply. "A long time," he said honestly. "Maybe a lifetime, but you don't rebuild alone." He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You have us now, and we'll rebuild together." Those words didn't erase the pain, but they widened the path to healing. By early evening, the group gathered to watch the sunset. The sky burned with soft orange and gold, reflecting off the partially restored buildings. There was dust on everyone's hands, sweat on their faces, and fatigue in their bones, but there was pride too. A quiet, powerful pride that came from choosing to rise after being broken. Lena stood beside Adam, her expression soft. "You know," she said, "you've helped more people than you realize." Adam shook his head. "They help me just as much." She smiled sadly. "You're still carrying so much, aren't you?" He didn't answer, but he didn't have to. She could see it, the shadows behind his eyes, the heaviness he tried to hide. "You don't have to pretend with us," she whispered. For the first time in a long time, Adam allowed himself to feel vulnerable. Not weak, but human. And in that moment, he understood something important. Rebuilding isn't just the act of fixing what was broken. It's the courage to accept that you, too, deserve to be rebuilt. As darkness settled, someone began lighting lanterns along the streets, soft, warm lights that glowed like hope taking physical form. Children laughed as the lanterns flickered. Neighbors exchanged stories, sharing bread and comfort. Music played faintly from an old radio someone had repaired. It wasn't the world they lost, but it was the world they were, building, together. And Adam, once a soldier defined by war, now found himself defined by something far more powerful: humanity, healing, purpose. This wasn't the end of his journey. It was only the beginning of rebuilding a life worth living. When soldiers come home, people think the war ends. But for many of them, the real battle is only beginning. Because the world they return to is not the same world they left behind, and they are not the same person anymore. He had been home for weeks now, yet he still woke up before sunrise, without an alarm, eyes scanning the room, breathing slow, steady, controlled. A habit he didn't choose, a habit war carved into him. Outside, the street was calm. Children laughed. Neighbors greeted one another. Life looked normal, peaceful, easy. But inside his mind, there were roads still covered in dust, radio static echoing orders, and shadows of memories he didn't want to remember, yet couldn't forget. He loved being home. He loved the warm food, the soft bed, the familiar walls. But every comfort came with an ache, a reminder of the people who weren't able to come back to theirs. He would sit at the dinner table, smile when his family spoke, nod when they asked him how he was doing. But behind every smile lived a name, a face, a brother in uniform who never made it this far. There were moments, small moments, when he almost felt like himself again. The smell of rain, the quiet hum of the fan, a soft joke from his sister, a memory his mother shared. But then a car backfired on the street, and his heart would jump into a sprint. Another noise, and his shoulders tightened like someone had pulled a switch inside him. He wasn't scared. He wasn't weak. He wasn't broken. He was trained for danger. And the body doesn't forget training overnight. He found himself avoiding crowds, avoiding loud places, avoiding questions he didn't want to answer. "Are you okay now? Are you back to normal?" "How was it out there?" he wanted to say. "I'm trying. I'm healing. Some days are better than others." But instead, he said the same sentence every soldier says: "I'm fine," because explaining would take too long, and reliving would take too much. At night, he sometimes sat alone in the backyard. The world quieted, the air cooled, the sky opened up, and under those stars, he let himself breathe. He remembered the men he served with his brothers, laughing between missions, sharing stories from home, pushing each other to keep going. He missed them more than he could ever admit, because those friendships weren't just friendships, they were lifelines. And though he was home, a part of him was still out there with them. There were days when he felt heavy, not because of what he had seen, but because of how much he carried. The responsibility, the memories, the promises, the silent guilt survivors often feel, and the constant pressure to look strong even when his heart felt tired. But he kept going, not because he didn't feel the weight, but because he learned in the battlefield that you keep moving even when the ground shakes. Slowly, quietly, he began to heal. A morning run, a coffee shared with his father, helping a neighbor fix a fence, talking, finally talking, with someone who understood. Healing didn't look dramatic. It didn't look heroic. It looked small, gentle, patient. And that was enough, because coming home is not the end of a soldier's story. It is the chapter where they learn to live again, to feel again, to trust again. And even if the battle inside them is silent, every day they wake up and choose to fight. It is a victory, a quiet victory, but a victory nonetheless. Some people think soldiers come home alone, but the truth is, someone always waits for them. A mother checking the window every evening, a father pretending to be strong, a sister keeping his room dusted, untouched, a friend keeping a message unread, saving it for the right moment. Home is not just a place, it is the people who keep their hearts beating while they are miles away. When he finally returned, his mother hugged him like she was reclaiming a missing piece of her soul. Her hands trembled, her eyes filled faster than she could wipe them. She didn't say, "Welcome home." She said, "You're safe now. That's all that matters." And in that moment, he realized how much she had carried too. His father stood a little behind, arms crossed stiffly, trying to hide the way his jaw tightened and his breath shook. He didn't cry. Fathers are trained by life to be mountains, but mountains crack quietly, ever so quietly. He placed a hand on his son's shoulder and nodded once. That single nod held more emotions than any words could. His younger sister had grown taller, but the way she ran toward him was still the same, fast, clumsy, full of love. She wrapped her arms around him and refused to let go. "You missed everything," she said. "Birthdays, holidays, my dramas, my fights." He laughed softly, but inside the ache pinched deeper. He had missed life while saving lives. The first few days home felt warm, safe, familiar. Family dinners, long conversations, neighbors coming by to greet him, everyone telling him they were proud. But something inside him stayed quiet, a space between what he felt and what he could share. Because how do you explain months of dust, sweat, danger, brotherhood, loss in just a few sentences? You can't. So he stayed silent, and everyone assumed he was okay. One evening, he overheard his parents talking softly in the kitchen. "Will he ever be the same?" his mother whispered. His father sighed. "I don't know, but he's home, and that's enough for now." He didn't walk in. He didn't interrupt. He just stood in the hallway, heart heavy, knowing they were hurting too, not because of anything he had done, but because of everything he had survived. Home felt different now, quieter, gentler, and yet strangely fragile. He moved through rooms like he was learning them for the first time. The sound of the clock ticking, the smell of fresh bread, even the softness of the sofa. Everything familiar, everything foreign. War changes a soldier, but it also changes the home that waits for him. His mother would check on him at night, thinking he was asleep. She'd close the curtains, adjust his blanket, leave the door slightly open the way she did when he was a child. He knew she did it. He heard every soft step, but he pretended not to, because it made her feel he was safe. And sometimes he needed that too. His sister would sit beside him in the morning, showing him memes, stories, jokes, trying to make him laugh again. He did laugh, but there was a softness in it, like the smile had traveled a long distance before reaching his lips. She didn't mind. She just kept talking. And slowly, that laughter began to feel real again. His father rarely asked questions. He just stayed close, fixing the fence with him, drinking tea together at sunset, standing beside him in silence. Some fathers speak with words. His father spoke with presence, and that presence became one of the strongest pillars holding him up. He realized something important. He wasn't the only one healing. His family was healing too. From fear, from waiting, from the quiet nights when they prayed he'd come home, from the uncertain days when they didn't know if he'd ever walk through the door again. Their healing was gentle. His healing was slow. But they were doing it together. Home didn't erase what he had been through. It didn't remove the memories. It didn't make everything easy. But it gave him something to stand on, something solid, something loving, something strong, a foundation for the man he was becoming again. And that foundation was built not with bricks, but with the people who never stopped waiting. Healing does not begin the day a soldier returns home. Healing begins the day he finally decides to live again. For weeks, he moved through life quietly eating meals with his family, sitting outside during the evenings, watching the world go on around him. But inside, he felt like he was standing still. Home was peaceful, but his mind was still a battlefield. And he wondered if anyone could ever understand the war inside him. One afternoon, he stepped outside and walked toward the old road behind his house, the same road he used to take to school, to friends, to nowhere in particular. Back then, the world felt light, carefree, simple. Now, each step felt heavy, as if he was forcing himself to reconnect with the parts of life he had left behind. But he walked anyway, because healing starts with a step, even a slow one. A small dog followed him from the neighborhood. It wagged its tail, jumping beside him, as if greeting an old friend. He smiled a smile that came, naturally this time. For the first time in a long while, he felt something shift inside him, something tiny, but real. A reminder that life still had pieces that could bring warmth, He reached the small bridge where he once sat with friends, laughing until their sides hurt. Now he sat alone but not lonely. Not today. He let the wind touch his face. He listened to the sound of water. He breathed deeply. The world was still here, waiting, patient, alive. Maybe he could be too. As the days passed, he started doing little things that once felt impossible. He began jogging in the mornings slowly at first, then more confidently. He visited the local grocery store, greeting familiar faces who welcomed him with warmth but without overwhelming questions. He fixed small things around the house, helping his father, making his mother smile when she saw him working again. He even started reading the old books he left behind before deployment books he once finished in a day but now took slowly, page by page, letting the words settle like medicine. None of this transformed him overnight, but they were steps, small pieces of life returning at their own quiet pace. One evening, he sat with his sister on the rooftop. The sky was painted with soft colors, orange, pink, fading into deeper blue. She looked at him and asked, "Are you okay now?" He didn't answer right away. He didn't want to lie, but he didn't want to worry her either. So he spoke honestly. "I'm not the same," he said, "but I'm trying, and I think I'm getting there." She nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder. She didn't say, "You'll be fine." She didn't say, "You're strong." She simply said, "I'm here." Sometimes that's all a soldier needs, someone who stays. He started visiting families of the men he served with, not to talk about war, but to share stories that made them laugh. The good memories, the brotherhood, the small, beautiful moments that still lived inside him. He realized something important. He wasn't carrying their memories alone. Their families wanted to know the joy, not just the loss. And somehow, sharing that joy helped him breathe easier. Because healing isn't forgetting. Healing is remembering in a way that doesn't destroy you. One day, his mother placed a small box in his hands. Inside was a journal blank, waiting, open. "I thought," she said softly, "maybe it's time to write your own story." He hesitated. He wasn't a writer. He wasn't even sure if he was ready. But that night, he opened the journal and wrote one sentence. "I made it home." Then he wrote another and another. Not about war, not about fear, but about moments, sunrises, conversations, emotions, memories, gratitude. Every entry was a small victory. Every word was a piece of himself coming back to life. Weeks later, he began volunteering at a local community center, helping younger kids with sports, teaching, discipline, teamwork, respect. The kids didn't know his stories. They just saw a man who listened, who encouraged them, who smiled when they tried their best. In their small, innocent way, they helped him heal without even knowing it. Because sometimes the simplest acts of kindness build the strongest bridges back to life. One evening, his father joined him on the porch. They sat quietly the way they always did, no pressure, no expectations. After a long silence, his father said, "You've become stronger." He didn't mean physically. He meant something deeper, a strength built from surviving, from enduring, from choosing to rebuild. His father continued, You've been through more than I can imagine, but you're still here, still standing, still trying." He looked at his son with pride, soft and unspoken. "That's strength," he said, "real strength." And for the first time, the soldier felt it too. One morning, he woke up and realized something had changed. The weight on his chest was still there, but lighter. The memories still came, but didn't break him. The quiet moments still felt deep, but no longer painful. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw not the man he used to be, nor the man war had shaped, but the man he was becoming. A survivor, a healer, a whole person with scars that didn't define him but proved him. He walked outside, felt the warmth of sunlight, and for the first time in a long time, he whispered to himself, "I'm ready. Ready to live, ready to feel, ready to move forward, not perfectly, not immediately, but genuinely." Healing isn't a destination. It's a journey, a long, uneven, beautiful journey that begins again every single day. And he was finally ready to walk it. This is what happens after the battlefield, after the uniforms are folded, after the crowds go home. This is the part of the story the world rarely sees, the quiet rebirth of a soul learning to live again, not as a soldier, not as a symbol, but as a human being who made it home and chose to begin again. Because in the end, war may change a soldier, but love, home, and hope can change him back.